Welcome to another spine-tingling episode of the Monster Kid Chronicles. Today's episode, They're Coming to Get You, Timmy, by Timothy Price.
Man, I hated being the fattest kid in the neighborhood. But if you were like me, someone who apparently thrived on insults from mean little girls and regular beatings from preteen punks on self-propelled motorless cycles, just being overweight simply wasn't going to cut it. Don't get me wrong, it was a good start, but let's face it, most kids aren't too smart, so I had to make it real simple for them. To truly be an easy target, a walking bullseye, so to speak, I needed to add a few more layers to that proverbial onion that makes up our very being, or in my case, to the Mars bars that made up mine. So throw in a phony feather haircut that on me looked more like an oatmeal bowl than the cool Keith Partridge do seen in the likes of Tiger Beat magazine. Then add in a few King Kong t-shirts, at least 2 sizes too small, mix in a deep love for anything geek, and you pretty much had me in a pathetic nutshell. And by the way, when I say geek, I'm not talking about a time when it was considered cool, hip, or trendy. I'm talking about the 70s, when being a total geek meant you were just that, a total geek, an alpha spaz, a king loser supreme. Yep, I was an uber nerd who, instead of playing outside on any given Saturday afternoon, opted for the wonders only to be found within the great indoors. Why, you may ask? Well, to watch monster movies, of course. Duh. I'm talking everything from creepy night crawlers, mad scientists, and sinister manifestations to the overgrown and angry city-smashing types. Like most of my fellow creature feature crazed kids of that era, I tended to gravitate towards the last variety, my favorite being the king of them all, Godzilla, that great big wonderful radioactive dinosaur brought back to life by repeated H-bomb tests. Of course, his giant pals were cool too. Not as cool as the Big G himself, mind you, but still pretty dang awesome. And every weekend they'd all be waiting for me to tune in. Those fantastic movies were my sanctuary, an oasis found in the midst of the elementary school desert, where, with all kidding aside, bad fashion jokes, bowl-cut puns, and Fat Albert comparisons slice deep like jagged sand upon your face. But on Saturday, all of my pre-adolescent woes vanished into an invisible stream of glorious VHF waves. I'm talking me, the TV, a green Tupperware trough of butter-saturated popcorn, a tall bottle of Pepsi-Cola, and the best program television had to offer, Channel 8's Terror Incorporated. It was truly, well, at least to this 9-year-old monster kid, the greatest show to ever exist on this planet, or any other for that matter. But believe it or not, there was more. Channel 8 was local, and from my second-story bedroom window, I could see their mountainous broadcast tower hovering high above the trees. It was tall, ominous, cool, and creepy all at the same time. Sometimes during a late-night thunderstorm, you'd swear it was one of H.G. Wells' war machines, especially when a crack of lightning would reflect off the chrome of the proud steel structure. This was one of those nights. Hot, stormy, black and scary, and I couldn't sleep. I laid there on my top bunk gazing out the window from across the room, staring at the tower through the rain, wind, and darkness. It was downright hypnotizing, and as usual, I couldn't help but imagine a great Martian battle taking place. I didn't even notice my big brother wasn't in his bed, and when the door creaked open, I yanked the covers over my head. "You're such a spaz," he snarled, while fighting to reel in the long tail of the portable 8-inch television just before the door shut. He glanced over to the little desk that stood just beneath the windowsill and tiptoed up to it. The top was cluttered with paint, papers, and a few half-built models that hadn't graduated to the display shelf yet. Then, in true Big Brother fashion, he swiped his forearm over my side of the desk to make room for the tiny TV. I shrieked when Frankenstein almost took a backwards plunge to the floor, only to be shushed quiet by his haunting glare. My brother's, not Frankenstein's. I sucked my screech back in and immediately clammed up. He set the small television down, plugged it in, and stretched the twin antennas into a 3-foot V. With one click, the set crackled, and the brilliant static cleared away some lame announcer attempting his best Bela Lugosi imitation. Coming up next on Terra Incorporated, gargoyles, blah 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 blah. After my brother found that sweet spot where we could see the little screen from both of our beds, he nosedived into the first story bunk. He knew I liked to stare out the window, gazing at both the monsters in my mind and that stupid eerie television tower. He also knew that at 9 years old, I was still an easy target. So, as we waited in the black and white flickering glow, he whispered from the bed below, "They're coming to get you, Timmy. They're coming to get you." Now, even as a kid, I could usually handle his crap to some degree, but not tonight. It was late, and the weeping willows creeping about in the storm seemed extra wicked this evening. So I immediately went for the big guns. "Shut up, or I'm gonna tell Dad." This, without fail, always worked. Because as a little brother, not only did he know I'd do it, he knew it was my duty. And one thing was for sure, when my dad became angry, he was 10 times scarier than any made-up monsters or any alien television antenna come to life. This time my brother did the climbing up, and I was victorious, if only for a few precious seconds. "You know, that stupid tower outside looks nothing like the spaceships in War of the Worlds," he proclaimed. Again, and for the millionth time, I tried to explain to him that it wasn't the Martian machines in George Pal's movie that it reminded me of, but the tripods in the Classics Illustrated comic book. That was when I suppressed my dork threshold, and like so many times before, he shut me down with one measly word: geek. The miniature grandfather clock hanging in the hallway just outside of our bedroom began to chime. It was 12 o'clock midnight. Time for Terror Incorporated's Saturday late night edition. That was when they'd show genuine scary movies instead of kiddie flicks like Godzilla's Revenge, or even worse, Monster A Go-Go. And tonight was the scariest of them all, gargoyles. This would be our second attempt at watching this one. Last time we couldn't even get past the first 5 minutes when the prelude to the opening credits talked about the devil and demons coming to life. But this time, I knew it was coming, and by God, I was ready. I hung my head over the top bunk, peered through the thick layers of my spaghetti helmet hair, and smiled at my bro. He was ready too. When the television faded to black, we knew it was coming. My heart was pounding and my eyes were wide open, and all at once the TV lit up to Channel 8's laboratory set. It was super cheesy, complete with rubber spiders, test tubes, purple beakers filled with dry ice, and of course, la pièce de résistance, a life-sized cardboard coffin. The camera panned in on the casket, and the Terror Incorporated vampire, or zombie-looking guy, or whatever it was, began to creep open the tomb which enclosed him. We never questioned why we were welcomed by only a sinister voiceover and nothing but a mutated hand trying to creep through the crack of the opening casket. Nope. It was obviously all part of the program. It was the mystique of not knowing what was inside the coffin that added to the mystery. It wasn't, however, in any way, shape, or form due to the station's $4.37 a week budget. Not a chance.
Crawling among the carcasses are the corpse thieves, planning their next evil spree into the cemetery. The flesh covering your brittle bones will peel away. The blood in your lifeless body will turn to dust as we gaze into the horror of this evening's presentation. Walk with me deep into the demon's lab as we journey into Terror Incorporated.
This was followed by a series of blood-curdling screams that for some reason always reminded me of Gladys Kravitz shrieking, "Abner!" on the old Bewitched show. This was it. There was no turning back now, and we braced in as Terror Incorporated began its slow fade to gargoyles. My brother repeatedly kicked the bottom of my top bunk from his bed below in a surge of pure adrenaline. It's time, he giggled, adding in an additional, "They're coming to get you, Timmy," for good measure. But this time, the sinister attempt at getting a rise out of me bounced off my noble shield of,
Cool movie coming on.
I imagined myself standing with my hands on my hips, shouting as the wind blew back my bowl cut.
Your petty powers have no effect on me, evil doctor brother.
I was too stoked, too excited, too...
We'll be right back.
What? How could they be right back? It hadn't even started yet. Man, this was not good. This was probably 2 more minutes of possible chickening out time. I heard my brother moan, and he pulled himself up from the bottom bunk. I was still staring at the gargoyle-less screen when he stated he was going to sneak downstairs and get something to eat. He asked me if I wanted anything, and I couldn't take my eyes off the small TV, which in itself was odd, because consuming enormous amounts of junk food was indeed high on my list of priorities. "Hey, Dork," he yelled in a whisper, "do you want..." He stopped and followed my widened gaze leading back to the commercial playing on the television, and, like me, was immediately sucked in.
Something beyond understanding is happening on this street and in this house. Behind this door lies something nobody expected, something nobody could believe. As a last resort, a man has been called.
In an explosion of bright bursts, a pointy-toothed, ghastly face began to flash on the screen over and over. It was so quick you couldn't make it out, lasting just long enough to scare the daylights out of you. We couldn't turn away from the late-night advert. It was too late, watching as our shocked faces reflected the black and white horror from the small TV. Suddenly, some weird tubular bell-like music kicked in, and the little girl in the commercial stretched out in front of something that looked like a statue of the devil himself. That was all it took. I freaked. After all, this wasn't some stupid tower outside, or my brother harassing me with mere words. This was television, real life. "Shut it off! Shut it off!" I thought for sure my brother would hiss at me to be quiet, but he was just as scared as I was. He began to scream, and we roared together in a shrieking chorus of pure terror. Ah! In a moment of cowardly bravery, I jumped down from the top bunk and SWAT rolled toward the outlet that gave the tiny set its electrified life. My brother, having a similar plan, did the same thing, and we both crashed into the bottom of our bedroom's flimsy display shelf. In a shower of World War II battleships, airplanes, and Aurora monster models, the particle board structure toppled over and onto the desk. Sure, it was cheap, as was most of our home decor, but it still managed to crack the TV screen, bend the antenna, and kill Frankenstein's monster. Something they said couldn't be done. I heard a loud thump from the other side of the house when my dad's large feet hit the floor. He was on his way. From the ruins, my brother and I simply waited. It wasn't because we were upstanding or model children ready to face the music. Oh no. We just didn't have enough time to clean up the mess, jump back into bed, and make up a good story. The beast had been awakened from his Saturday night slumber and wasn't happy about it. Not at all. Legend tells the tale of this large, ape-like creature that spouted off about having to work all week long while it roamed the confines in nothing but its tighty-whities. The locals even went so far as to give this mythological monster a name, Big Fat Underwear, a rather crude translation formed by the words dad, angry, overweight, and briefs. You may think it impossible for a door to literally explode upon being opened, but believe me, my dad could do it. At first, he just stood in the doorway, with one hand grasping the doorknob, grounding us with nothing but a cold steel glare. Then, upon spying the broken television buried within the rubble, the hairy beast let out a fierce roar. "Larry John! Timmy Mark! What the hell is going on in here?" It was a first and middle name double zinger, and there was no doubt about it, we were doomed. By this time, the monster's mate had appeared, her hair piled high in curlers, with an offspring she-child in tow. Our little sister, who always seemed to get a kick out of it whenever we, or more so, me, got into trouble. I'm thinking it was because of that time I switched the head of her Barbie with my G.I. Joe, then chased her around the house with them saying, "They're coming to get you, Kelly. They're coming to get you." Who knows? But obviously, being concerned for our well being, she peeked around from the back of my mother's leg, grinned, and stuck her tongue out at us. Yeah. My dad, still screaming at the top of his lungs, said that the next time we tried to sneak in a late night horror movie, he'd use the belt on us. Now, to fully comprehend the power of the belt, you need to imagine James Earl Jones saying it, "The belt," because this wasn't your everyday ordinary belt. According to Dad, this one was 10 feet long, donned 6-inch stainless steel spikes, and was made from the hides of his previous children. The funny thing was, there were plenty of next times, and we still never saw that infamous belt. As a matter of fact, it was Pop who introduced us to the King of the Monsters on that very show about a year ago, when he, himself, snuck us out of bed to watch it with him. "Don't tell your mother," he whispered. "If she knew I was letting you watch Terror Incorporated, she'd kill me. Probably with that stupid belt." Pop turned toward us, and I began to mentally write my will. I, being of sound mind, leave my brother Larry, all of my monster models, and creature feature board game. To my pal Jeff, I leave all of my 8mm films and my authentic Seventh Voyage of Sinbad movie poster. And to... That was all there was time for. And as the eyes of Big Fat Underwear glazed at us, one on my brother and one on me, it eased forward. "What the hell's the matter with you?" he asked as he bent over to pick up a large chunk of plastic that was lying at the foot of our bunk bed. As he surveyed the crime scene, he repeatedly slapped the broken piece of the television set in his open palm and snorted, "Go get a broom and clean up this mess. And put on some damn shoes. I don't feel like visiting the ER tonight." My brother and I, in a state of shock, didn't move. We just stared at the merciful monster from our beds. "Now!" it bellowed, and we sprang up to get our shoes, a broom, and whatever else we needed to clean up the mess. The beast snarled one last time, turned and walked down the hall towards its lair, followed by its mate and female cub. We started cleaning, and the last thing we heard was one final muffled roar. "When you're done, go straight to bed, or I'm getting the belt." And that's just what we did. It was the crack of dawn, a mere few hours later, when my dad made us get up out of bed to pull weeds. The ground was still soaked from last night's storm, and both Larry and I were covered in sweat, dirt, and shame. Well, maybe not shame, because in all reality, we got off pretty easy. Heck, my mom was even helping while my baby sister played with one of her dolls in the center of a pile of pulled weeds. I sneered at her, and of course, she did what she always did, stuck her tongue out at me. Yeah. I stopped to wipe my brow and gazed at the Channel 8 television tower off in the distance. Didn't seem to look so scary today, probably because daylight tends to leave nightmares powerless. Sure, tonight things will be different. I'm also sure that my brother and I won't get scared silly by any commercials about demons possessing 9-year-old girls anytime soon. Because it'd be a long time before we had the gonads to watch anything after 10 p.m. 3 weeks at least. I pulled a half-melted Snicker bar out of my pocket, because always being prepared wasn't just for Boy Scouts, and tore open the wrapper. My little sister's chocolate meter buried deep into the red, and she came waddling over. Figures, I thought. I broke it into 2 messy pieces and gave half to my brother. When my sister reached up, I simply stuck my tongue out at her. Yeah. Just before breaking her off a piece. It was good. And so was the silence, even though my brother was more than likely thinking about that commercial and what was in that little girl's bedroom. I know I was, that, and the fact that we still hadn't seen gargoyles. My dad burst out of the house and our noisy screen door slammed shut behind him, putting an abrupt end to our pondering time. We watched him twirl his keys and jump into the wood-paneled station wagon. As he drove off, he smiled at us, his 3 kids, standing in the yard with their faces covered in peanutty nougat and dirt. Something wasn't right, I thought. He seemed so happy. I remember being concerned that maybe he was running away from home, but Mom said not to worry. He was just going to Sears to buy another TV. A much bigger one this time. Maybe one with a 12-inch screen.
You have been listening to the Monster Kid Chronicles, written and produced by Timothy Price, recorded and engineered at MZ1 Studios, USA.